This is another MetaTalk.
No, I am super passionate about people and seeing people achieve everything that is inside of them. I believe every single person has something great inside of them. And I reckon with the right people around them or the right leadership, it empowers them to see everything that's inside actually come to fruition. So I'm going to speak a little bit about leadership. But from a different angle. Instead of talking about how to be a great leader, I want to talk tonight about how to motivate people to want to follow you. I reckon there's lots of great ways to lead, but if you're not motivating people to want to follow you, you're actually just going to be going for a walk, they say. We all have the desire to achieve something great, but we won't win unless we can work together. So to motivate people to want to follow you, I've got a story about this cafe that I went to. It was actually a restaurant. It just opened up on the Sunshine Coast. And I'm sure plenty of us have been to new restaurants and you're excited. So me and my wife are excited. It's one of our hobbies. We just like going to new restaurants, drinking coffee, stuff like that. Anyway, we go there, and I tell you what, the menu, it was superb. The fit out was funky. The prices were great. And we're there and we're looking at each other like, man, we could actually go here all the time. Like, this is actually going to be epic. And so we're there and we're going through the menu. And then the owner of the restaurant, obviously new restaurant, he was there, comes over and he starts talking to us. But I noticed on his way over, he seemed a little bit flooded, a little bit agitated. You know, he just wasn't relaxed, you know. And so he comes up to us, and I'm trying to be really nice, you know. How you doing? He's like, yeah, I'm good. And I'm like, you know, and we started talking. I'm like, man, I love this restaurant. I love what you guys have done here. And he goes, yeah, it's good. But if only there was more people here, he says to me. And I'm like, oh yeah, but it's okay, man. Like they'll come. And anyway, he goes on and we're chatting, and he just wasn't at ease, you know. Anyway, he was talking a lot about his problem, and he went on to say that he was just a little bit worried, et cetera, et cetera. And he goes back, and me and my wife look at each other, and we just sort of don't think much about it. Order our food. Man, the food comes out. It was probably the best food we've had on the Sunshine Coast. Like, we were just loving it. We were so excited about this restaurant. Anyway, so we go back next week, and sure enough, the owner is still agitated. He's still a little bit worried. And he comes up and by this time I know his name, so I use his name. I'm like, hey man, how you doing? And he's like, yeah, good, but no one's coming in still. And anyway, he went on again to talk about his problems. And so, you know, a man of belief and a man that wants to see someone achieve greatness, I thought, look, I'll see past his fact that he's always down, and I'll keep going. Well, after a while, there was only so much that me and my wife could take. And so, you know, we're about to go out for dinner one night, and we look at each other, we're like, how about we go there? And like, nah, look, I'm just going to feel stressed out if I go there. So we ended up stopping on going to this restaurant. Long story short, 5 weeks ago, this restaurant just shut down. And the problem here that we see is, like, me and my wife made a decision not to follow this restaurant any longer, because every time I had an interaction with him, he was concerned about what was going on with him. He wasn't concerned about what was going on with me. And often we can do this in life. You know, often we are mean to people in order to get them to be nice to us. You know, often when someone is paying us out, or we're in an argument, we actually argue back because we want to calm the situation down. Because in life, we ultimately do this all the time. We always repel the very things that we want to attract. Another example, we want our kids to clean the room, so we yell at them, clean the room. You know, we want to get a point across to our spouse, and so we strongly give that point. You know what I'm saying? Like, we always repel the very things that we actually want to attract, and that's exactly what this guy did. So if we want to motivate people to want to follow us, it doesn't matter how good our front is. It doesn't matter how good our shop is, how good our leadership model is. At the end of the day, if people are not choosing to want to follow, you're not going to achieve those great things that you've got in your life. So we must be aware that everything a person does everything, and I know that's quite a big statement, everything a person does is driven by a desire to feel loved, valued, and validated. Everything. This rule cannot be broken. I go to work, and my job, I do it because it actually makes me feel good. Now, my job is about helping other people and adding value to people's lives, but ultimately, I actually only do that job because it makes me feel good. I know that sounds selfish, but it's true. We work a job that we don't like to get money so we can buy food that we do like, buy clothes that we do like. But then there's the opposite people that quit the job that they don't like so they can go surfing, ultimately so they can feel good about themselves. Everything a person does is driven by this desire. So if you want to motivate people to want to follow you, you've got to know and you've got to be aware all the time that this is how everyone around me is operating right now. Everyone. And so another story of another cafe, because I'm just a cafe buff. I love coffee. I love going out. And a lot of us know this cafe. It's one at Mooloolaba. And I remember the first week it opened, I was so excited. We go down and they just serve coffee here. So I walk in, sit down, and I order my cup of coffee. And the owner once again was there because it was a new restaurant. He brings my coffee over, gives it to me. I start drinking it. He smiles, says hello, goes away. Comes back about 10 minutes later, just before I finish my coffee. He goes, "How was it?" He asked me how it was. I'm like, "Oh, it was awesome, man. Thank you." And he goes, "Yeah, look, we're just trying out this new bean. Like, was it okay? Was it too strong or this?" And all of a sudden, he's asking my opinion. I'm sitting there thinking, well, yeah, well. Actually, yeah, it was okay, it was a little bit, and I start pretending I know what I'm talking about, And what he was doing, he was making me starting to feel validated, like valued, my opinion, even though I didn't have a clue what I was talking about. And at the end of the day, he probably wasn't going to listen to my advice. But he was very smart in the way he went about it. Anyway, we have this conversation, and he genuinely was actually being interested in what I was saying. So he goes away. I've had my coffee and I'm sitting there talking, just loving it. And he comes over about 5 minutes later with this tea. He's been making this brand new tea. Puts it on and goes, "Look, man, just taste this for me. Tell me what you think." And I just couldn't believe it. I'd already been validated, valued, feeling the love. And then he goes over the top, gives me a free drink. So I'm drinking it. Anyway, I thought, this is great. So, of course, what do you do when you find a good restaurant like that? You go back. So the next day I went back. And he'd already won me over. So I go there, order my coffee. Sure enough, 15 minutes later, what's he do? He brings out a cold pressed coffee, one of my favorites. Puts it down and goes, "Look, this is just one of our cold pressed coffees. Just have this one on the house. Have this drink." That owner no longer works at the cafe. The coffee quality has actually come down quite a bit. But I still continually go to that cafe every day of my life because I associate that cafe with the feeling of love, with the feeling of value, and with the feeling of being validated. See, ultimately, to gain people or to motivate people to want to follow you, you've got to make them feel good. It's just that simple, really. So here's 4 things on how you can make people, or 4 motivation steps, I like to call them, on how to make people feel good. The first one is you've got to be interested. You've got to be interested. So the story of these 2 restaurants. The first one that failed and is now shut down, clearly when he came to me, he was interested in himself. He just wasn't interested in me. And it's not even a big thing. The thought of being interested in somebody else. And the other guy went out of his way to be interested in me. It's been proven that most people can't determine the difference between being heard and feeling loved. When you would stop and listen to someone, people actually think that you love them, even if you don't know them and don't care about them. And the greatest form of flattery is allowing someone to flatter themselves. You see, people feel loved when you give them the opportunity to talk well of themselves. And so that, once again, is the ability to listen to somebody. How to motivate people to want to follow you. Motivation step number 2 is you've got to use your mouth to listen, not to talk. Often we use our mouths to say what we want to communicate instead of using our mouths to hear what we want. So these restaurants, once again, same thing. The first guy, he was obviously flustered, a bit angry, so he used his mouth to try and feel better about himself because he needed to vent. He needed to get it out. And many people do that. That's what most of us do in our relationships and stuff like that. But the other guy used his mouth to listen. What do you think of this coffee? What do you think of this tea? What do you think? What do you think? It's the most powerful thing you can do. Yeah. And motivation step number 3 is to ask the big question. And this is what I want to bring it home on, the big question. This is the biggest question you can ask in any human interaction that you have with a human. What would I want if I was this person? What would I want if I was this person? You know, I was having a heated conversation with my wife, and as you do, it was a passionate conversation. You know, we just were disagreeing on something, and she was giving me her opinion, and I was giving her my opinion, which was right. And you know, she's not here, I can say that. And eventually I stopped, and I asked myself the big question. If I was saying the things that she's saying, why would I be saying that? Because I felt it was unfair that she was saying those things to me. But then I thought, well, if I was saying those things, chances are I'd actually probably have had a bad day, feeling a little bit agitated, and actually she's not saying those things because she wants to be mean to me. She's actually saying those things because she's actually a bit agitated. So I stopped and asked myself the big question, why would I be doing what she's doing? And in every area of life, if you can ask yourself that question, it changes the way that you act. We always assume the worst of others, but assume the best of ourselves. Ultimately, what I'm saying is if we can assume the best of others, you're going to motivate people to want to follow you. So my challenge or my encouragement for you today is to just do this simple thing. Every time you have a human interaction, is ask yourself the big question, what would I want if I was that person? That's it.
This has been another Metamorphic production.